Happy Thursday and welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. Mark Moyer doing some great things with his networking events and informational events. Check out winagainacademy.com for more information. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today I have the pleasure of bringing Holley Harris into the Wolff Den. Holley, how are you doing today?
Well, in general, I'm doing great. Today's a pretty emotional day with everything going on in Afghanistan, but in general, doing really well.
So first, I'd like to thank you for your service and also everyone else's. It means a great deal to me and everyone else here. I was just having this conversation the other day about how I wouldn't want to go and do what they're doing in the military, and so I'm thankful that there are other people who want to do that. And it's just we're hoping for the best of a bad situation.
Absolutely.
So give everyone a quick introduction of yourself for those in the audience who don't know who you are.
Sure. My name's Holley Harris, and I'm currently in Tampa, Florida living. Love Florida living, especially in Tampa during COVID. And I am an Army Intel officer in the reserves now. And my unit is Special Operations Command Europe, located in Stuttgart, Germany. I originally hail from upstate New York. My civilian job is working at a company called Data Miner, and I'm also president of Women in Defense here in the greater Tampa Bay area.
So Tampa Bay, it's the hotbed of sports the last year. Are you a sports
Tampa
fan?
Bay. We've renamed it Tampa Bay, just so you know.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Are you a big sports fan?
I prefer baseball and hockey myself. Grew up at a very young age. My dad wanted a son. He got me instead. So we are a big sports family in that regard. But I've gotten more into it when I'm living in cities where sports are, doing well, I guess. Yeah. So especially here in Tampa.
Yeah, if the Rays win it this year, it's it. We should all just quit and just call off everything. That would be pretty wild. We haven't seen anything like it.
Right.
Well, explain what you do a little bit more with regards to the reserves.
Yeah, so I commissioned through the Army ROTC program back in 2005. And originally I was on active duty. So I did 4 years of active duty and then switched to a reserve role after that. So being a part-time soldier, essentially. And it gives me more freedom to manage my career. So last year, the reason I moved down to Tampa was to go back on active duty at Special Operations Command headquarters here in Tampa at MacDill Air Force Base. And I wrapped that up last October, and now I'm back into reserve status and working at Special Operations Command Europe. So essentially, my role as an intelligence officer with them, I would periodically go over once a year and knock out my entire obligations for the year, which is really great. It works out nicely with my civilian role. And I'm able to, have my life, but still serve in the military. So being in that status is working out really well for me right now.
Yeah. So, you're never really a part-time soldier. You're a full-time soldier that
Sure.
is kind of active part-time. But in the military, you can't just kind of leave, right? Everyone has a choice to become in the reserve or no?
Well, originally, you have a service obligation at the beginning when you sign a contract, which is always 8 years for everybody. A lot of people don't realize that. So even if you just serve 4 years, you're kind of on the hook for that last 4 years. If, things were to go south somewhere in the world and they needed to boost reserve forces somewhere. So I guess being in this long was never my plan at all. I was going to do 4 years and be completely done. And at the time I was getting out in 2009, it was the height of the global war on terrorism. And I felt like it was important to stay in just in case and fulfill my obligations and in that way. So that was back then. And seemingly I'm still in. I just hit 16 years last spring. So I'm going to stick it out at this point.
So when you start, we're going to get to women in defense, which is something that you're a part of the organization. But speaking of women in the military, 16 years ago, probably a lot different environment for women in the military than it is now. How was it back then? What's the biggest change, and what still needs to be changed even further?
Yeah, I think a lot of women have issues that I perhaps did not experience in my career. When I first came on active duty, and I think that I'm probably a little more feminine than your average soldier too. So one of my things has always been, I'm not going to lose my identity by being a female soldier. I'm not going to downplay who I am and about myself in any way. And that doesn't always go over very well. Sometimes it's been more difficult for people in the room to take me seriously, simply because of what I look like, or getting dirty looks, and even from other female soldiers. And that's always been a little bit of a challenge, but I know other women experience difficulties. There's issues with sexual assault, sexual harassment, and things like that. And that's definitely an ongoing issue that the military is trying to address. That's never been anything that I've experienced in my career. It's really just kind of being the authoritative figure that you need to be in certain situations. Yeah, I mean, I've had a really good time and a great experience being a female in the military. I really don't have anything negative to say about it.
Yeah. A lot of A Few Good Men, one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm also a big fan of G.I. Jane. Hazing, in a sense, is really a part of the military just to begin with. So if you're someone who might look different or act different, that's probably something that could get you in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, and I think that it depends on what environment you're in. Hazing, or just kind of being less politically correct, I guess, is very common in a lot of workplaces. And to be perfectly honest, I prefer those environments. I want to be able to just joke around, tease, and things like that. But there's a lot of red tape, and people have to be more mindful of those things now because there are a lot of repercussions and things. You need to be respectful to everyone in the room. And so it's been a delicate situation. You really have to know your audience when you're acting certain ways.
Yeah, time and place also. I mean, lives are at stake. So there is going to be time for joking around and, having sort of a looser environment. But then there's a time when it's all business, and,
Yep.
Any mistake or letdown could mean the lives of people. My grandfather served in the military and told me a story that he was on guard and at the night shift, and I guess he dozed off for a little bit. Got very lucky that nothing happened, but it's a tough job. Like I said, it's nothing I would ever want to do. So I really, I'm impressed, and I appreciate the people who do want to get involved with that. What made you choose the organization that you're in as opposed to something else like the Navy, like Air Force, or something?
My dad jokes around about it still today. So there was this show called Tour of Duty about Vietnam back in I guess the 80s. I was born in 83, and I was watching it at 4 or 5 years old. And I told him then I wanted to be like LT, this lieutenant in the show. I mean, that's very bizarre for a 4 or 5-year-old girl to watch Vietnam shows and be really into it. So I wanted to be in the military, in the Army, forever. And I did it, and I never changed my mind, which is really cool. But when I was actually coming time to pick a branch, this is kind of funny. I mean, I didn't think I was tough enough for the Marines, and I thought I was too tough for the Air Force. So I kind of just defaulted to the Army.
No Navy?
No, I can't swim.
That's why they carry around in the big boats.
I guess so. I mean, that was my thought process as a junior in high school.
So that's a pretty good story. So it starts out with watching a show. So many shows and movies. MASH is considered one of the greatest shows of all time. Do you find yourself watching a lot of the movies that come out? And what's your feeling as you're watching some of this? Because I'm sure a lot of it's embellished. There's probably some truth to what goes on, and some of it is just, ridiculous.
The first thing, I think it's always fun to see all of the uniform errors, and as a military person watching, I'm like, that's not real. That doesn't happen. You're wearing your uniform wrong. So it's always funny from that regard. But I find myself kind of gravitating towards military movies that are from the era that I served. And so being able to have that relatability, I don't really love older war movies, but my favorite is The Patriot of all time. So
The Patriot, is that Mel Gibson?
Yeah. Yep, that's my favorite military movie. Outside of like the Bin Laden movie, just because that was my job downrange to do that level of intelligence. And so that was very relatable. I think, I'm just gravitating towards something that I can relate to.
What would you say is the most accurate movie that's really as close to the experience that you had?
I mean, probably the Bin Laden movie. I can't remember, Zero Dark 30, I think it was. And I would say that the process of like gathering intelligence and monitoring would be what we actually do. Some of the things that aren't true are like the level of technology or the turnaround times. Like they always show like aerial footage and it's like perfect cameras. You can see like the expression on someone's face. That's not a thing. So the technology is definitely overinflated. I would say that one of the movies from talking to my colleagues, one of the movies that was least accurate was The Hurt Locker, the explosive ordnance detonation teams kind of just walking around in wild, wild west in Afghanistan. So it doesn't really happen like that.
I think it won awards too.
I'm sure it did, but
it did. Who knows? Well, let's talk about women in defense. What is it? How did you get involved? And what's the mission?
Sure. Women in Defense is an organization that falls under NDIA, the National Defense Industry Association. So think of this as like all of the civilian companies that support what the Department of Defense does. So Lockheed Martin, things like that. They're creating technology and solutions for the Department of Defense. And so we fall under NDIA, and the organization is essentially to promote women leaders within the defense side and within the industry side within the defense organization. So really just uplifting those women leaders in these companies and in the military. And the goal is really to come together and understand requirements from a defense perspective. What does the DoD need right now to complete their mission and be, the best fully mission capable that they can? And how does industry support that? And so we host monthly luncheons where we bring in a guest speaker to speak to some of these topics that our membership is interested in, talking through procurement of contracts or the latest information on open source intelligence, so that there's a better understanding across the board of what's happening and what needs to be done to boost up the defense priorities.
Right. And can anyone become a member?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people think it's women in defense, so it has to be only women. We're actually, here in Tampa, about 40% of our membership base is men. So anyone can join the organization, either at the national level or with a local chapter. So most major cities with a huge defense footprint have their own chapters, and they're really good to be involved in. There's a lot of social activities, these informational luncheons, and we do fundraising. Here in Tampa, we particularly do fundraising for STEM efforts, and we do scholarships for local young girls who want to get into the STEM field and into the defense environment.
Oh, that sounds pretty good. Were there influential women in your life prior to joining, and then people in the ranks as you joined that kind of helped you along the way and gave you some good support?
I wish I could say there was. So this is an ongoing issue within the military that I've spoken to quite a few people about. One of the reasons that a lot of women leave active duty and service in general is because we don't have a robust mentorship network within our ranks. So oftentimes, we're just by default, we only represent maybe around 10% of the force to begin with. And so for a female to be in a unit with another female leader is just fairly rare. I know when I was a brand new lieutenant, there were maybe a handful of other females ranked above me. And I think it's definitely lacking in the defense, at least in the military, from my perspective, of having women mentors reach down and help out younger females. Oftentimes our only option is to have a male mentor. So, which isn't bad, but it's just different.
In the past year, there was a major promotion of someone, which I think kind of broke the ceiling or was history?
There has been a lot lately. Yeah. So I can't speak off the top of my head, but there's been some definitely breakthrough promotions and appointments into different organizations. So that's always great to see.
The world has been more integrated with men and women. I'm not going to say equality still doesn't have a lot to go. So why is the Army and the Marines and the armed forces, the military, why are they so far behind in that? Because there's no reason to believe that a woman can't do the job as well as a man. Maybe there's a physical difference, but the people who are leading are not the ones who are necessarily doing the physical activity, right?
This is where I'm going to disagree with a lot of people out there. So I know I am a female in the military and president of Women in Defense, but I think there's a delicate balance between integrating women into, especially some of our special operations units, and not doing so for the sake of being politically correct. Yeah. We have to always, when you join the military, you're supposed to be focused on mission first. So that should always be our first priority. If it doesn't make sense for the mission, we shouldn't be doing it. And so I think when we're talking about integrating women into certain positions and organizations, we need to do so from a very smart way of doing it. For example, deployed twice with special operations units in Afghanistan, and knowing what those individuals do on mission is very physically taxing, and I don't think we should ever lessen the criteria for the organizations for the sake of introducing women into those organizations, because it's a mission issue. It's a safety factor. You need to be able to carry the same amount of weight in the same amount of distance. There can't be any bend on that. But you also have to look at the perspective. When these guys go out on target in Afghanistan, they are not effective when it comes to dealing with women who could be on target. So you absolutely have to have women there in that capacity to speak with foreign women, especially Muslim women. They will not talk to, and it's not appropriate for our U.S. soldiers to be speaking with them. It's just a cultural thing. So having women there on target or something is invaluable, and it definitely needs to be happening. But I'm just very of the mindset that we should do something that makes sense for mission, and we can't lower any standards by trying to force something.
I think everywhere we shouldn't just put women or people of color in a position just to
100%.
say we did it. But what happens is it starts at the bottom, right? When you first enter, and if you kind of remove or ease the barrier to entry and the desire for people to want to do because of the environment, then just naturally through performance, they can rise and get to that level and then be qualified. So that's part of the problem, is if we're not including enough women and we're not giving them the environment that they need to succeed and want to actually stay in, then they're not going to elevate and keep elevating and it just will keep getting better.
We have a long ways to come culturally in the military as well. So it's getting beyond that good old boy system in a lot of organizations.
I was gonna say, the good old boy network is, and it's not exclusive to the military. It's the same thing in college football and the same thing in corporate all across the
I think
US.
Women have a different way of looking at things and bring something to the table. Absolutely. So it definitely needs to be happening. We just have to do it the right way.
So in the military, you're told not to make decisions or show anything based on political party. It's supposed to be nonpartisan, but there's so many different types of people. Is there a lot of differing personalities and beliefs in the military when you get away from just, hey, I'm serving my country? And how do people navigate through that?
Yeah, there's definitely rules and parameters in place for what we're legally allowed to do and say while serving in uniform, especially as an officer. So you have to be very delicate of that and make sure everyone's aware of that, especially it becomes a time more important of an issue around election season where people are more involved and very opinionated. So that's been something to navigate throughout my career, especially. I would say, just on my own experience, more people tend to lean conservatively, but we definitely have all types. And I think the best practice from what I've seen is just don't discuss it in the workplace. It creates a lot of conflict, and you don't want conflict amongst the ranks. So anytime you can avoid that.
sometimes you don't want to know what someone believes in that environment.
Absolutely.
But sometimes it can be helpful because your life is on the line and your life is in their hands, and you have to trust them, right? And they have to trust you. That's the ultimate thing of trust, is being in the military with your life online and millions of other people's.
I think that's the best part of the military, is the camaraderie and the friendships and relationships that you build amongst the ranks.
I mean, you've been there for 16 years. It feels like probably the last 8 to 10 of them, the political environment has been more of an issue than it was probably the first 8.
It seems obvious, yeah. I don't ever remember it being this divided.
I was saying, I always like to joke, like, if I was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and I had to name a press secretary from anyone before the last guy, I would lose. And I don't even know anyone who would know. It was just one of those things. And now it's like, I had no idea they do it every day. These are things about like the world and how the U.S. operates in the military that, and we've actually learned a lot more about what goes behind the scenes and what's involved in all of this than we ever did, which I think is a good thing. But there's always negatives about that,
Sure.
too. How many people do you know that joined because you joined? Is that something that happened?
Because I joined, or because of joining, the same reasons that I joined?
No, because you joined, you've inspired.
Yeah.
People told you that, or?
Probably a handful, I would say. I do a lot of mentorship, and a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, will reach out to me and ask, what is the best way to get into the intelligence community? And my first answer is, if you're able, always join the military. And here's why. And so that happens quite a bit. And I'm always pushing people that I don't think everyone should serve, but I think if you're even slightly interested, you should, because of how it develops you as a person and the doors that it opens for you later on. I would not be where I am today at all if it wasn't for the military. And I've had my little brother join the Air Force, walked him through the recruitment process in there. So that was great. Convinced people during ROTC. Anyone can do ROTC at college, just hang out, do the Army stuff. It's great skills building. And then you get to a point where you have to decide whether you're joining the military or not. And so one of my really good friends, Brandon, I think I would like to say I was a little influential in convincing him to join the military, and he's still in today. So
is there a joke in there somewhere about your dad saying you were too tough for the Air Force and your brother joined the Air Force?
There is, but I will refrain from teasing him. I definitely tease him all the time about that. We call it the chair force.
It's good to have him in there. He's lucky to have someone like you to watch over him and make sure he's doing the right thing. The military is, like you said, the ROTC, and it's all about structure, right, and discipline, which I think there isn't enough of in the world, or at least the U.S. outside of the military, where breaking the rule and the law is breaking the law, and it doesn't matter if you steal a pack of gum or if you I don't know, whatever much worse things are. I always say it's not that hard to follow the rules. You have a lot more rules to follow than the average civilian. How hard is it to follow the law and the rules of exactly what you're supposed to do?
I mean, I've always been a rule follower. My husband jokes around about that I'm definitely the rule follower. But I'm also like on deployments and things like that. When it comes to like getting a mission done, or, making sure that lives at stake are put first and things like that, I'm okay with bending the rules there to get things done, within reason.
So that's no, go ahead.
Go ahead. But yeah, in general, I'm definitely a rule follower. I don't think it's difficult. And we definitely have more restrictions and things like that. I'm trying to think of an example in the military of stuff that we're not allowed to do that everyone else kind of is. Yeah. I don't know.
It just brings me back to A Few Good Men, where, they said, look, they were given an order and they followed it, even though they knew it was wrong. And there's no kind of room to have your moral thoughts about it. But I have to assume, like you said, if it's a difference between life and death and you have to make a decision, it's
There's
possible.
also unlawful orders too. You can't just tell people to do anything. And I mean, there's probably soldiers out there that would do it, but as a leader, you have to make sure that you're giving appropriate rules and you're not using your rank for your own benefit and things like that.
That's kind of the issue, right? Because even if they do that, when I was in corporate, if my boss told me to do something, I had two choices: to do it or to find another job. And so I assume in the military, it's that much harder to tell someone that this person isn't doing what they're supposed to do.
We have processes where, just like in the civilian world, we have whistleblower, things like that. We have processes with Inspector General that you can raise a complaint and hopefully get yourself heard if you can't through your own chain of command. But I don't think that that's very difficult, not an issue for most people.
Okay. What's your future like with serving? Are you going to keep going? Have you thought about that?
I'm so far in. I'm going to just keep trucking along. But I'm also very much looking forward to retirement. I feel like I've checked the block and I've done my obligations and my duty as an American. So I'm looking forward to kind of being done with it, especially with weeks like this week, just the sheer frustration.
That's up to you, right? When you
at this point, yeah, I've the way it works, if you're enlisted, you sign contracts saying, okay, I'm going to do 4 more years. I'm going to do 6 more years, depending on, but I'm at a point where I'm year to year. So I can literally end today if I wanted to and resign my commission. But I'm so far in, I've just hit 16 years and 20 years till retirement. So it's worth for me to stick it out these last few years to set my family up for success in the future with my retirement. And I'll have two retirements essentially, since I'm working in the civilian world as well. So it just makes sense.
Yeah, you talk about a tough week with everything that's going on. A lot of information out there, a lot of misinformation.
Sure.
The bottom line is that it's a bad situation. People are dying, and more people are going to die. Is there some? Without getting political or anything like this, is there something out there that you find is just really wrong information that people should know about it from your side as someone who's in the military and has, I don't know, brothers? Do you call them brothers and sisters or?
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked at the amount of people that have reached out to me in the last week and a half and wanted to know what's going on in Afghanistan. So, and I kind of get it from a perspective that we have been there for 20 years, so long. It's not on people's radars as much as it used to be, like post 9/11. But people your basic American sometimes does not have an understanding of why we were in Afghanistan to begin with, why we stayed and what we were doing there, and understanding why we're leaving now. So I was just kind of shocked that there's just a lot of misinformed people, or uninformed, I guess.
I think part of it is, and I follow it to an extent the same way I kind of follow politics, is I just trust that the U.S. is going to do what's in the best interest of whoever they can and protect us in the way that they can. And I don't know that.
I think the Americans in Afghanistan right now probably felt the same way.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get it. And I don't even know if there's a good way, or if I'm assuming some of this could have been avoided, but from everything I'm reading, it was either going to be we're always there, or something like this to some extent was going to happen eventually. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think that leaving Afghanistan was a good plan. It's just the execution on how we left was poorly planned, if at all. So typically we would leave a soft special operations forces footprint there to sort of manage things and do a slow regression of forces, which should have happened. Because it was so abrupt, that structure was not in place to do it properly and essentially save lives. And now we're in an absolute disaster of a mess this past week and a half. And it, in my opinion, most of it could have been very easily avoided.
Yeah. It's never good when you have people who are risking their lives and they're not getting the support that they needed. So we're wishing everybody the best in this situation. Just the best possible outcomes of a bad situation. Sometimes, there's still ability to minimize damage or to stop damage from getting worse. You talk about retirement, but you're not really going to be retired because you have this day job, data miner, and we can't talk a lot about it. But is there anything you can tell us about just, in general, what you're aiming to do with them?
Yeah. So my company has really found a way to capitalize on all of this information that's being put out there in the world, this publicly available information, with a lot of it being social media. So if you think of a situation where something happens around you, you're just this average person walking down the street, a lot of people are pulling out their phones now and documenting that, pictures and videos, and uploading it online. So we're able to use this information to alert specific users of what's going on in the area from a safety perspective. So my job is specifically working with our special operations customers throughout the military and allowing them to know what's going on in the areas that they're operating. So this morning, updating, moment for moment, what's happening on the ground at Hamid Karzai Airport. This just happened, and here's the updates. And people are posting this pictures and videos of the unfolding event, and being able to get that to them quicker than traditional media outlets or traditional operations and intelligence channels is really impactful, because they're able to make decisions on the fly and use that information to their benefit.
Is this in the crowdsourcing space? Kind of,
it's not really crowdsourcing. So it's really pulling from anything that you can find on the open web and letting people know, hey, this is, and sometimes there's false information. It's the internet, so anyone can post anything. But getting the information of these safety events that's happening around the world to these users that can benefit the most has been really impactful.
Maybe crowdsourcing isn't the right way to say. Kind of like the way Waze is, it's user generated, right? Because that's open source type information.
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing.
There was a really interesting show called Wisdom of the Crowd, which was, it had Jeremy Piven in it. And this guy, his daughter was killed, either killed or kidnapped. And he was trying to find the killer, and he created this thing where everyone was, giving information, and then based on the mean of that, right? You can't just consider this everything, because there is false information out there. So they kind of got the average and were able to track and find criminals and people doing wrongdoing, kind of. So it's interesting. I kind of like that. I think it's great. There's a lot of information out there. The problem is, and I used to work for LexisNexis. We did a lot of, they're a data company. We were doing anti-money laundering solutions, and they had some pretty neat stuff to help law enforcement that kind of was shared information. Because a lot of people don't know that there's a lot of organizations that operate separately, and they don't kind of share the information when they really probably should be, because it could be it might not just be a
problem in the intelligence community. Yeah. Sure, stovepiping information.
It could be a state, it could be a U.S., a country, a world, whatever that is. It's people have information that could be helpful, and again, it could have been prevented, some of the stuff that's happening, because we knew that. And then there's a lot of false information out there, and you could spend your whole day weeding through stuff that's false information, right, to try and figure it out. So it's good data in, good data out, and you got to find a way to manipulate it and to, I guess, get rid of the bad stuff.
Sure.
So when you're working there now, so when you retire from the military, you're full-time there now, unless you get employed, and obviously they're okay. They understand that you have to go when you have to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's a law, so my job's protected anyways, but I'm very fortunate to work at a company that really supports my military role, and it goes hand in hand with the customers that we support. So that's been nice.
You're probably not the only military person out there, considering the scope of the company.
Nope, definitely not. There's a good amount of us, actually.
Yeah. And so that'll be your full-time job. When you retire, do you envision yourself kind of taking yourself away from the military? Because you're never going to get away from it, but you imagine that you won't be as invested in it.
Yeah, so I'll always be interested in everything that's going on, and I'll probably miss it as soon as I leave. But I think my goal here very soon is to move away from the defense industry and just do something else. I mean, even coming off of active duty, I didn't really plan on doing the defense thing. I wanted to be more law enforcement leaning, but it just kind of, you get wrapped into it. And especially when you have a 20-year war, there's always, good money to be made in the defense industry. So it's kind of sucked me in, and I've had a great time, but it's time to do something else pretty soon here, definitely within the next 5 years.
I'm gonna plug LexisNexis Risk Solutions. I think you'd be great for them. You got the data mine and the experience. I think.
Yeah, give me a call.
I'm not there anymore, but I'll have someone reach out. I'll have someone reach out to you. What would you be doing if you never went into service?
If money wasn't an issue, I really just want to work in nonprofit, specifically with animal rescue. So I'm a big dog rescuer. I love senior dogs. I think there's a big issue with senior dogs being brought into shelters and surrendered because of health issues and things like that. And I think that that's no way to die. So my goal eventually is to do something along that. But if, considering money is a factor, unless my husband gets a really good promotion here soon, I'd probably stick to something in the social media field, but maybe doing something along the lines of like sociology or instructing. I think that there's something to be said about social media affecting people and cultures and how much impact it has on society. And I'm just really fascinated in that. So I might want to take everything that I've learned, working with publicly available information and open source intelligence in the last 6-7 years and apply that more to a sociology perspective, maybe instruct at a college or something.
So a few questions there. What kind of dog do you have?
I have 3, and I'd have more, but my husband would probably leave me if I could. But I have 2 senior Chihuahuas, Ellie and Junebug, and my husband has a 1-year-old mini Australian Shepherd, and he's a nutcase. So he definitely keeps the Chihuahuas on their toes.
Yeah, I eventually would like to get a pug. They're very hard to find from rescue. But I think eventually I will have. That's the dog I always wanted to have, and so eventually I will. I'm away too much right now, and it's harder to take care of them. But eventually I'm going to get one. The other question was, we have cats here, and the cats are great, but dogs are a different type of experience.
Totally.
Yeah, I think they're more, you have a more intimate relationship where you can just, my cats will run away from us every time you want to try and,
man's best friend.
Come here. Yeah. The question I really want to know is, before you ever enrolled, what would you have done? The money was not really thinking, hey, you just think I have to have a living. So was there something you had in mind growing up? I know you always said you wanted to be in the military, but if you had changed your mind, what do you think that would have been?
I would have been a police officer for sure.
Okay,
and I don't know why. It's not like I came from a military family or anything like that. I'm definitely the oddball in my family. I'm the one who moved away. I'm the one that's doing all the crazy stuff. And there's just something about serving that, as cheesy as that sounds, I've always just wanted to serve in that capacity, even as a little kid.
I think I'm Jewish, but there's a lot of people who are religious and spiritual, and serving is a big thing for them. And that means a lot of different things to a lot of people. Sure. Some people want to serve in the way that you serve, whether it's military or it would have been police. And some people serve in other ways. They're all needed, and
Absolutely.
And all of them are needed. We need more of all of them. So it does make sense to me from that perspective. But what's the most important thing to you about being in the military?
I'm one of the most patriotic people that you'll ever meet. I love this country so much and everything that it stands for. And I think it's important to defend those values and also assist countries that need support in various ways. So it's just protecting the thing that to me is the most important thing, and that's being an American citizen, and defending our values and our country's borders. Really, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I think again in the last couple of years the term patriot has been misused a lot, from what I think, because you got people with all these different opinions saying they're all patriots and we want to, we believe in the U.S. and I do too. I think the U.S. is the best place in the world. I've traveled the world. I would never live anywhere else other than the U.S., although I do love to travel and visit. But do you ever see the I always go back to entertainment because I watch it. It's just fascinating, some of the stuff they put. But there was a movie, a TV show on HBO called Newsroom, and someone was asking, why is the U.S. the best country in the world? And he's like, we're not. We're lagging in this and we're lagging in that. And to some extent, that's true. But at the end of the day, I don't know if there's a better place for anyone to live. And I guess it all depends on what's important to you. But to have the freedom, and sure, we have some constraints maybe now, but at the end of the day, we have freedom that other people would dream of. For me,
ask any Afghan trying to jump on a plane right now why they want to come to America, and there's your answer.
Yeah,
I think Americans don't always appreciate everything that we have. I've lived overseas. I've seen how other cultures, maybe it's just a nationalistic point of view, but I think that we're really, really fortunate to be Americans and being able to have the opportunities and the values that we have here in the United States. And for me, isn't it sad? Like after 9/11, look how many people were so patriotic, putting up American flags, supporting the troops. Why does it take an attack on our homeland for people to be patriotic? It's very sad.
Holley, it takes bad things to happen for everyone to realize, like, you only live once. You see your family member die of cancer or COVID, or, sure, in an accident. And I always say, for me, that's the one thing that we need to do. We need people to be proactive instead of reactive in the way they feel and what they're doing. And there's a reason why they're talking about Afghans trying to get to the U.S. and they're not trying to get anywhere else. I mean, obviously we're the one who's injected ourselves into this, but sure, also we do what other countries aren't willing to do. And it's because of what we believe in as a country, and it's for the greater good. It's not just, hey, we're only going to do what's good for the U.S., which, and I'm a U.S. over everything else, but I'm also, sometimes you have to help out the people who can't help themselves. And we're, sure, I guess, the best people in the world to be able to do that, from what I can tell.
Yeah, absolutely. We're one of the leading world powers. We are the best country in the entire world, and I think that it's an obligation at some point to assist others that need us.
Yeah, and that's not even just in the military. That should be in your
disaster relief, or you name it.
Yeah. Well, how about travel? You said you lived overseas. I'm sure you've traveled to some places. Where was your favorite place to be? Maybe as a civilian, or it could be maybe it was under duty. And then where's a place that you haven't been that you would really like to go?
Yeah, this is something I think about a lot lately, because traveling is a huge part of my life, and not being able to do that as freely lately, it's been pretty depressing. So I'd say the best place I've ever traveled to is Bali. Bali was, it was just, the people are so friendly. I mean, it was a very relaxing place to be. Did a lot of scuba diving, just traveling the countryside. It's pretty inexpensive too.
I heard it's very inexpensive. Michael Franti, he's a singer. He's got a yoga retreat in Bali.
Lots of yoga retreats in Bali.
Yeah. A very popular one, especially from the States, but definitely on the list for me. Maybe a little bit lower than some other places, but I heard it's very affordable, which is something that could move it up on the list, right?
Yeah,
I got a lot of places. Even Hawaii is on my list, which I've never been to, and but it's expensive.
Yeah, love Hawaii very much. Been several times. The best place where for the military is definitely South Korea. Spent 3.5 years living there and was able to do a lot of traveling from there. So I'm very well traveled in Asia just by being stationed there.
Oh, that's great. I've been to China and Japan. I'd like to get to Thailand and the Philippines, and
highly recommend Thailand.
Yeah, who vacationed and Thailand's pretty inexpensive too once you get there. Where haven't you been that you would like to go?
So 2 things are kind of competing right now. I would love to do a nice cruise in Greece, like all around Greece, and I'd like to do a solid 2 weeks driving France. If I could take or leave Paris, but I'll definitely do a few days in Paris, but I'd like to get up to the beaches of Normandy, see all of that, Pointe du Hoc, and then drive through Bordeaux, drink a lot of wine, and then hit the lavender fields in Provence. That would be a dream trip.
What's your favorite wine?
I'll drink anything red pretty much, but I'm leaning towards red blends. We were just in Napa about a month ago. That was really nice. So definitely reds.
What does your husband do?
He is the head engineer for Staples, the office store, and he's a former Marine. So he went to the Naval Academy and he was in the Marine Corps, finishing up in special operations as well. Also an intelligence officer. So we really hit it off in that regard.
Yeah, a lot in common, and certainly understanding, where you're at and what your mission is. Is that how you met through military?
We met through a mutual friend who also went to the Naval Academy. He was like, "You guys both scuba dive, you're intel officers, you're both special operations, you're both recently single. This will work for you too."
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Now you gotta get him to let you get a few more dogs, right?
Exactly.
Well, look, I really appreciate your time here. It's always good to get a perspective from someone who's there. And I could probably have another person on from the military who have a different perspective.
Totally.
So it's, you always got to just absorb the information. But people who are experiencing something firsthand it's just a different perspective than the other people who are all, internet warriors and, like you say, all the Facebook, all the military experts and doctors on Facebook and social media. It's and scientists too. So we'll let you out of here on the same question we let everyone go with. You can have one person that you get to spend a day with. They have to be living, and you can't be related to them. Who are you going to pick, and what are you guys going to do? We're going to do outreach for all of our guests. We have a list. We've had some pretty interesting answers. Like someone said Putin, which we're probably not going to be able to make happen. But we have some others that I think we'll have a shot at doing. So anyone in the world, you can meet them and spend the day and do what you would like.
I am completely obsessed with General James Mattis, and I would love to have a beer with him. I met him once at a bar in New York City, and he's just a really cool guy. His experience, I've got a huge crush on him too. My husband's going to kill me for saying that, but
is that the Mad Dog? Is that Mad Dog?
Yes,
Mad Dog Mattis.
Absolutely. Yep.
You're not gonna have. He doesn't drink wine.
Call sign chaos.
You're not gonna drink wine. He doesn't drink. He drinks beer, not wine.
I'll drink whatever he wants me to drink. Honestly.
He's the one who wrote a book.
He did. Yeah, I just read it. It's called Call Sign Chaos. It's a really good read. Easy read. You don't even have to be military to get something out of it. It's a lot of focus on leadership.
That's the message, is leadership.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's on the list. The first military member that we have. We've had some presidents, athletes, philanthropists, and that's a good get. He might be harder. He probably has Secret Service protecting him.
Probably.
It might be harder for anyone. But
He's
look,
a quiet guy these days.
I think anything's possible. We can find a way. I said we'll do some type of event that just attracts these people and make it so compelling and helpful and philanthropic that they just can't say no. And maybe we'll get all of them at the same time, and we'll get our guests on there. Anyway,
that'd be great.
General Mattis is on the list, and really appreciate you being here. Check out Women in Defense. You can see him on Instagram there. I'm not going to try and read it, in the website too, right? WIDGTB. What's the GTB?
Greater Tampa Bay.
Okay, so that's your chapter, and there's a national chapter too.
Yep.
All right, well, check that out. Support it if you can. Support the military. Let's all hope and pray and good vibes that will get our people back and help the people who need help out there. Again, thank you for your service, and we hope to hear some good things. Hopefully you'll get to enjoy your retirement, and we'll work on General Mattis for you, unless your husband says no.
He's a Marine, so he'll say yes as long as he can come.
He'll want to be a part of that too, right? All right. Well, we're going to be back next week with some really good guests again. So have a great weekend. Stay safe, and we'll see you back on Monday.
Thank you so much for having me.